Are
Try it.
let's see. The blue line has not gone to the end. We are. It's moving. It's moving. It's moving. 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 And we are live. All right, here we go. Party people, we are back. It's been a couple weeks, but I am here, Dana Harris, of Young Gurus Math Tutoring, and I am here with my good friend, colleague, and all the above, Monica Black. Monica, introduce yourself to the people, please.
Hello, hello, hello. I am Monica Black, educator, chaos creator, all around shit starter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
So, Monica, it's been a couple weeks. First of all, shout out to you for getting back inside the teacher studio. And so, if you all have not checked out her content on Instagram as well as YouTube inside the teacher studio, definitely check that out. Also, do me a favor if you're watching this, whether you're watching it live or you're watching the replay, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Here lately, I've been doing more of this versus the math videos, but I will be back to the math in due time. I think it's got to be a feeling, right? And honestly, like just for starters, like lately, I have not been feeling it. Um, in regards to just creating the content, but I believe that is centered around what we're going to talk about today, right?
Mhm.
And so I did a tutoring session before this session, right? And I hadn't done a tutoring session in a while. Just focusing on some personal things and focusing on what I need to do internally to get back to that space to where it's like I get that excitement back about creating the math videos. Well, part of that internal battle has been my feelings towards things that are going on at the job at the 9 to 5. And so for those of you watching this that don't know, my current role is I teach math 2 in North Carolina, which is equivalent to algebra 2. And so those things, my day job has really, on one hand, been affecting my 5 to 9. You know, you got the 9 to 5, and then you got the 5 to 9, right? So today we're gonna have a lovely conversation about how long you stay on a particular topic and when to move on. And we'll go down a couple different roads, and we'll bring this plane. We'll do that go round like they do on American Airlines or your favorite airline. And we're gonna land this plane. So for starters, let's do a quick check-in, Monica. How are you? How's things been going for you?
Ooh, as most educators across the country, we're crawling to the 20th.
Yes, yes, we are.
Last week, I had, kiddos come in the room. My room is kind of the catch-all. Like I'm a teacher on special assignment, so I don't have my own roster of students, right? However, every now and then I'll have meetings in my class in my room. Kids will come in, people will test kids in my room, they'll have, one-on-ones, all those kinds of things, right? And last week they were doing iReady testing. And right. So there was somebody who came in, like a sub, who was like they pulled them in so that they could come and test students, right? And they used my room. So this one little girl was in there and she was just sneezing and coughing. I was like, she got something.
Right.
And as soon as I feel that, I'm like, because this time last year I had RSV.
Oh, wow.
Now, mind you, 2 months before I had COVID. So I was knocked on my behind, right? And so this time when I got the snotty little ones in my classroom, I was like, no. And I even handed her a mask. I'm like, please put something on. I'm like, I've got plans for this break. I want to be able
Right.
to enjoy them, right? And
Right.
so all that being said, I got sick. And
Mm.
Sunday I started to feel it. Last week I was had migraines and all that kind of stuff, right? So I basically have been out except for today. I've been out all week. And you can kind of still hear it in my voice.
I can't hear it actually.
Oh, you can't.
I cannot hear it.
I've
So
got
you
that. You
must.
know how like people like they think you got that like raspy, sexy voice. Nope, I'm sick. I'm not trying to do this. This is my anyway. So I go in because when we come back, we're coming back to PD and I'm leading a part of it, right? And
Uh-huh.
so I'm like, I got to get ready because I don't have access to printers and all that kind of stuff at home. So
Yeah.
I go in today and I'm just a mess, right? I'm dragging. So that being said, I'm not going to work tomorrow. I'm going to make this a 1 day work week. So
Lovely.
yeah, I went in and there's going to be like 3 or 4 classes. Most of the school is going to be gone tomorrow on a field trip. So I'm just like, why am I going? So
Absolutely.
I need to rest because I'm about to get on a plane and I don't need to make everybody sick. So
You know what? I definitely understand that feeling. When you are getting ready to get on a plane, it's like it creates a real sense of urgency to get well.
yes,
Because if you're like me, I'm that person that's like, they're coughing.
right, right.
Oh.
I don't want to
And
be the person coughing and everybody's looking at me sideways.
well, I'm
How are you?
doing pretty good. Recently I just had some fun um having to replace a sewer line at my
Oh,
house.
you
So
told
so been dealing with that
hostess with
and
host with the most.
yeah, yeah. After hosting my family, lovely Thanksgiving gathering, and on the back end, I had to replace my sewer line, which was a very costly Christmas present to me and the
Lord.
boys.
Oh, that's
Um,
too much.
and on the job, I'm crawling to that finish line on the job. What I'm finding is that I'm working every single day to find ways to push through being in a position that I was pretty much voluntold.
Right.
Um, and so the cool thing about my position actually is like the kids, they haven't, other than all the fights going on in my school this week. I don't think there was a fight today though. Which is rare. Other than that, I think the cool part about being in the position as PLC lead is that I get to support basically three brand new teachers. One of them, he started last year and he is still here this year, but the other two, they are brand new into teaching, and so I'm helping support them through teaching math as well as just kind of like catching them up to speed to the different day-to-day operations things. So um
Right.
I made it through today. Today was a very long day. So now I'm like on this mad dash to update grades before the end of the
Oh,
day tomorrow and things like that. Got some
is it
tests
the
to
end of a marking
grade.
period and everything too?
It's not. I wish it was. I would love to go back to a system where we ended the semester before Christmas.
Right.
That's just and that's a whole nother
Right.
podcast in a sense.
Right.
Um, but let's get into the topic. So we were talking about this idea of how long should we as math teachers stay on a particular topic, and when do we know it's the appropriate time to move on? Now we must set the atmosphere with this caveat because anybody who is in this profession knows that we have pacing guides.
Oh, don't say that word.
um and
Don't curse
and
at me
that
like
word,
that, Dana.
right, that word is like scratching the chalkboard. um because for starters on this conversation, right? Let me pose a question to you. How do you feel about pacing guides, and what do you personally think is the purpose of pacing guides?
I think, mm, like a lot of things in education, there's some great ideas that are implemented in a horrible way. And so this is one of them, right? Um, and it's funny because I was talking about how I was preparing for the PD that we're going to have the day we come back from winter
Hmm.
break. And the little bit on the agenda that I have has to do with making making some decisions about this very thing, right? I've got people, there's like, I think 6 modules in our math program.
Hmm.
And some people are maybe finishing module 1 or, some people are on track, but of course they're just flying um through the curriculum.
Hmm.
And so, I looked at it and I'm like, from the day we come back till spring break, there's like 56 days of instruction.
Hmm.
And that's not including like the days that they give assessments, things like that.
Hmm.
But that is taking into consideration, like holidays and things like that. Anyway, then I looked at the lessons, right? And this one grade, second, third grade, in second grade, she has like 104 lessons and the other one 107. So clearly, there's not enough days to cover every single lesson that's on that pacing plan.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. So we have to make some decisions, right? I'm not a big fan of the pacing plan for the sake of hit this mark on this particular day.
Right.
Because I think it takes away from our creativity and artistry as educators to really
Hmm.
make decisions based on what we're seeing with our kids.
Hmm.
On the other hand, I think sometimes the pacing plan or something like it is needed because I don't think teachers sometimes trust that things are going to spiral. So they feel like they
Yeah.
got to get it from the very, very first time they see it. And so that's why some people are still on module 1 of 6 and we're
Hmm.
halfway through the year, right? And so we have to make these conversations, we have to make these decisions, right? And so the pacing plan by itself, I'm not a big fan of. Like I just told you, I'm like, don't curse at me like that, Dana. Because it's just been something that it's like the bane of my existence is trying to get folks to just understand that nobody's coming for your job if you're not on this page at this day at this time. Nobody. Like I've never seen a teacher get fired for not being on pace. Never. We've had
Right.
this conversation before. They've
Right.
never even gotten fired for not putting in their assessments into Illuminate. So, but it's hard because some folks think, oh, they we adopted this curriculum for a reason, so I'm going to teach the curriculum. And I was like, but again, you're on module 1. We're supposed to be at like 3, right?
Right. Yeah, that's simple math.
Right. And again, I'm not a fan of a lesson a day thing because even though we have enough days in the school year to account for that, um, it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to make better decisions about how we pace ourselves through the curriculum. It's
I
really the
so
content. Sorry.
so man, you okay, here we go. Let's do it. Couple things come to mind, right? And one of the first thoughts that come to mind in regards to pacing is I understand having a plan is very important. What I've come to realize is this whole lesson a day thing, right? And here I know so I'm back at high school. So the semester long classes, some of them have multiple lessons a day, right? And my concern with that is a lot of students, their desire to learn math and their confidence in their ability to learn, understand, and do math is stagnated and sometimes even fully destroyed because it's okay. We taught lesson one today, or lesson one on Monday, lesson two on Tuesday. We're at Thursday going into Friday, so we should be at lesson five tomorrow. But there's more than one student. There's a group of students that say, and I'm living this right now. Oof, oof. My students have a test tomorrow. We started this unit technically on Friday, well, officially on Friday, but technically on Monday, right? 5 lessons, and they got a test on it. And we're talking about this unit is on trig ratios. Where my challenge is a lot of kids morale is shot because there are a group of kids that still want to learn and understand the math. However, they are struggling with this idea of why are we going so fast? Why are we going so fast? Now, when they laid out Common Core, and this applies to every state, whether they're a Common Core state or not, whether they're Smarter Balance or Park State, which I haven't heard a lot about Park and Smarter Balance recently, but I'm pretty sure they're still thriving. Um, we just rolled it out, and the idea was supposed to be kids will get a deeper understanding. They say, and my camera is doing some weird things. I don't know why.
Right. I was like, is that my glass? Is that because I don't have my glasses on?
There we go. Look
There
at
you
that. Look at
go.
magic. Um, so 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 they're saying that okay, we should go deeper, more deep than wide in each year. But if we're still throwing out a lesson a day, we're how are we going deeper versus wide? And I look at this thing because I'm learning. This is a new curriculum that I'm teaching from our district. Our district has invested probably millions of dollars into having this curriculum built. And I was looking as I was teaching this week, and I was like, wait, there's certain things that the kids are supposed to derive it, but then the way that the lessons are set up, it's not going to help them to derive it. But to get to the point on this particular point, I believe that pacing guides are important. I'm a I think good teachers actually will teach a lesson enough until roughly 60 to 80, 60 to 75% of their students get it and we can move on. The, the good thing about math is that I've seen, and I know you've seen this, many times we might be in a unit or in a lesson and kids are still struggling. Let's say you're at that 50% or below mark where you feel like students get it or are proficient if we use teacher language, right? But we've seen many times a kid might struggle with one thing, but then down the line, the spiral comes in, and it's like, oh wow, I've got the understanding of that, Miss Black. Um, and I'm understanding this. So that helps boost their confidence. But I think it's almost like going to Lake Merritt and feeding the ducks. You can just throw out bread everywhere and they gonna come flying. But the bigger, more aggressive ducks are gonna get more bread than the more timid, smaller ducks.
Hmm.
And so if the bread is the math material, the more aggressive students who have that home environment that is in a sense forcing them to perform in school, um, they're gonna get more. The kids that have access to a ride so that they can stay for tutoring are gonna get more. The kids that are confident in asking questions and not feeling embarrassed by being wrong are going to get more. But when we're just you ever I think kids sometimes see being in a math classroom like they're riding in a car, and instead of looking forward at the street where we're going, it's like if you just look sideways out the window and you just see all the things passing by, just
Oh, so fast.
zoom 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 zoom, you know what I'm saying? I think a
Right.
lot of kids feel like that,
Yeah.
you know. And so pacing guides kind of like it almost makes you feel like you're chained as a teacher. You know what I'm saying?
Well, again, right? I think that they were made to help teachers who don't know how to make those decisions about curriculum.
Agreed.
Um, this is the thing about education, right? There's so much transiency, right? Not only with
Yep.
kids, but with educators, right? They don't make it really easy for us to want to stay.
Not at all. Not at
Right.
all.
And so people that aren't like really love it and connect with the students and connect with their job, they're going to leave. I mean, I love teaching and I've thought about it and I've left a couple times, right? I always come back. But there's like this revolving door of new teachers, right?
Absolutely.
And you'll hear some leaders say, "Oh, just use so and so's PowerPoint." And I'm like, if I didn't make the PowerPoint, the PowerPoints are supposed to be minimalist, right?
Right.
So if I don't know what this prompt is supposed to be about, then how am I supposed to facilitate that learning, right? Anyway, so I think that these pacing guides are meant to um, keep teachers on track. But if they are new and they don't trust that, they're going to feel like they got to stay to that lesson until the kids get it. Right. And
Absolutely.
so they're not going to feel like, you know what? I know it's going to come back around, not only in this module, but in future modules, right? Where the content connects. But also, um, but yeah, like they'll stay on that content. But then there's also the curriculum. Now, mind you, I was on the publishing side for a minute.
Hmm.
And so I know a little bit about how publishers make these books, right? Like you said, Common Core came around, what, 20 years ago now? Wait, when was it?
2008, roughly,
Okay.
somewhere between 2008 and 2010. Because I
Right.
remember only because when I worked for the company doing that, when we were doing building assessments, it was 2009, 2010, and they were still in the early stages. Yeah.
Mhm.
Ironically, I remember it because of when I got divorced.
Milestones.
It was around that time. So
Oh,
yeah, so we're
yeah.
talking about, let's just say, roughly 15 years.
Right. So, it's been around for 15 years and you've got teachers that are like, I'm going to teach the way that I've always taught, the way I've been taught, the way that worked for me, or even if it didn't work for me, it's the only thing I know. Right.
Right.
Um, and so they've got a program that appeals to that teacher, more traditional, like directed lesson teacher.
Hmm.
But they've also got some stuff in there that is addressing the things that we're focusing now on in math ed, right? Like
Right.
we're productive struggle. How do we build agency with students? How do we help them make sense of these problems? Um, how do we support them in knowing that they have an answer within themselves,
Hmm.
right? And so, excuse me, still sick. Um, oh gosh, there I go with my
And it's
ADHD.
and it's essentially the everything you just said. What comes to mind is the standards of mathematical practice.
Right. So, so you've got these programs that appeal to both kind of teacher, right? Um, and so people like us who've been around for a while, we can look at this lesson and be like, okay, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that. Let me focus in on that really good meaty problem,
All the
right?
time.
Because a lot of these programs that say they're about supporting productive struggle and problem solving in students, they give like 19 lessons of let me tell you how to do it this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. And each of those like 3 or 4 lessons each, right?
Now we done
Then
confuse the
I'm
kid.
gonna hit you with the problem. Instead of flipping it, let me give you a good juicy math problem. Let me help you unpack that problem. Let me help you think about what tools do I have that I've used that make sense to me?
Right.
And then letting all the different strategies come out in the conversation about it at the end,
Hmm.
right? So there's a lot of stuff in the teacher's notes that you can choose from, but people want to do every single word on the page,
Yeah.
right? And so, again, I think that's the struggle with all of these tools that they give us to help. They just dumb it down for us, just like we end up dumbing it down for kids, right?
Yeah.
We don't trust and have the patience to build that within our educators like we want them to build, that productive struggle and that confidence in their students. Because you know how you were saying earlier that, if we have the students that have that, support at home, well, you know what? We don't have control over that, right? What we do
We
have
don't.
control over is what we're doing in the classroom. And there are things that we can do to make those kids that haven't been necessarily traditionally successful, whatever that means, right? In the math classroom to think, oh, I can solve this problem. Oh, the way I thought about it is valued in this classroom. Like I belong in
Hmm.
this math classroom. I'm a mathematician too.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that we can do, but the thing is, we as educators have to have the patience to just ask a question and be quiet.
Mic drop.
I mean, it's the reason I know this is I think we've talked in previous discussions about how much I enjoy going to professional learning, like conferences and everything, right? And
Hmm.
the reason I do that is that I've had enough success with trying things and being like, oh, I didn't think that would happen. Right. And so
Right.
I have these stories that I can tell, but my stories are my stories. I can't sit up there and tell them to you, and you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to do what Monica said. Right. Like the only thing I can do is really just kind of, as a coach, how do I design some learning experiences for my colleagues so that they can see as learners, this is what I'm going to have to do to solve this problem. And now, what are my kids going to have to do and how do I support them in doing that? Right. So,
Hmm.
I think I've been all over the place with this conversation, but
No, it makes
I,
sense though.
yeah, you'll have to forgive me because I'm really like, huh? Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I think you did. What I believe in regards to these different curriculums, I understand the point of a curriculum. But the thing that I want to touch on that you spoke on was when I look at young teachers, like I told you, I got a team of three other teachers who are new to the profession, right? And so one of them went to college for math. He has a bachelor's in math, but he's in his 60s. And so
Mhm.
he shared a story with me. He did that in undergrad when he was playing college football. You
Okay.
see what I'm saying? So he's able to understand the math. However, it's challenging to him to understand the new version of it, right? I believe that teacher preparation programs and then the onboarding process, or let me separate them. Teacher preparation programs cannot prepare me. I know when I was going through mine, it did not prepare me to be able to break down a curriculum, dissect it, and be able to go through and say, okay, these are the meat, this is the main course. This is the meat of this is right here. This is the steak.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily, I'm not a Brussels sprout. I love Brussels sprouts, but a person might say, I'm not a Brussels sprouts person, so I don't want to eat that. But
Hmm.
I do like these mashed potatoes,
Hmm.
so I'm gonna eat those. And so if I'm new to the profession, I haven't been prepared on how to do that.
Right.
And then when I get onboarded into whatever district that I'm working for, they don't set me up for that. So then now I'm as they say, building the plane as I'm flying it. They're trying to balance all those different things, so
Hmm.
many other things besides curriculum.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And then now there's the, oh, well, you should take care of yourself. You should look out for your mental health. You keep telling me that, but then you keep
You keep
pouring
stressing me
more
out.
things on my plate. Like I had a conversation with one of my teammates today about that, and they were saying like somebody pretty much told them because they took a day off. They were like, I needed a mental health day. Took a day off. Said that one of the administrators reached out to him. Was like, oh man, when you go on the holiday break, get some rest. Don't mess with any of this. I said, yeah, only for them to when we come back, them to throw a bunch of stuff on your plate. But
Right.
the reason I share that is because um that is a challenge for teachers. You and I fortunately have a an affinity towards understanding not just the mathematics, but understanding the curriculum. So
Hmm.
I'm going through this curriculum and you can go through the curriculum and we can pull out and say, oh no, we need these things like that. But even as a leader, I love what you said. I can give them some pointers around the mathematics, but they have to find their superpower. They have to find their voice. They have to find their USP in regards to building relationships with their kids. And
Yep.
the kids that you have this semester or this school year, that system might work,
Right.
When I get a new group of kids next semester in January, when I get a new group of kids, I'm gonna have to start from day one. Now,
Yeah,
I have a
long gone.
reputation based upon kids seeing me and their friends and associates being in my class and things like that. But I don't know who those other individuals are as learners. And so what worked for this group of kids may not work for this other group of kids. What works for my second period may not work for my fourth period. And then
Hello.
I got to factor in my fourth period. They're tired.
Right.
They've been at school since 6:50 and it's now 1:30. All these other things. We don't know what they've gone through throughout the day. So to come back to the topic, I believe that I guess and it's maybe the question is rhetorical or not. Is there a way that we can teach teachers how to do that, whether it's on the teacher training side at the universities or whether it's something that districts need to focus on making an investment to actually train new teachers to do that? And then that's going to be a healthy investment because now what it takes to teach math teachers to do it is not the same as what it takes to teach English teachers and science teachers and history teachers to do it if we just stick to the core classes. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
So in secondary, you have the opportunity to focus on one, maybe two things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Elementary, they got to do it all. And even in a time of language arts and math and nothing else exists on the campus, they're still struggling. And what's, I think, difficult is having been a math coach and knowing that that's the first thing that's going to get cut is the math coach.
Yep.
They're going to
All across
give
the
all,
nation.
it makes no sense to me because people feel comfortable with language arts instruction,
Yeah.
right? We've supported them with PD, a focus on EL, like on English language arts, and we forget, especially at the elementary level, that a lot of people become elementary teachers because they're like they don't like math. So if you've got people that either don't like it or they've told themselves a story that they're not good at it, then they're going to need more support, right? And
Hmm.
so for the last couple of years, we're supposed to have had a focus on math. And yet
Everywhere. All across the nation.
I still have to kind of stick my head in and be like, hey, remember us?
Yeah.
And so I just advocated because this is me, always want to start some stuff. Everybody does their Wednesday PDs or whatever your early release days, right? Everybody
Hmm.
does that a different way. PLCs if you happen to have PD time during the day, whatever that is. Like in elementary, even I think when we were at Montera, I think it was like first and third was IB, and then second and fourth, or second was grade level, and fourth was subject,
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that. Now I'm
Yeah.
getting the weeks wrong, but it made no sense to me because let's just say math is one week, science is another week, social emotional learning is another week, and then ILT is another week, right?
Hmm.
So I don't see you for 4 weeks. And so whatever we got to cram into a 50, 60 minute, I mean, by the time PD starts, it's like an hour.
Right.
And as somebody who's designed learning experiences, and I know this is going to like make everybody like shriek, I think that in order to have a really good experience, PD should be about 2 hours. Now, 2 hours of engagement, not 2 hours of like sitting there hearing somebody talk about something that should have been in an email, right? I'm talking about a real learning experience,
Or
right?
someone reading slides to you.
Hello. Or somebody saying, can somebody read the slide? like
Oh
that, like
gosh.
that's any better, right?
Yeah.
So, so I have advocated for let's do 3 weeks in a row
Mm.
and then switch. So
Mm.
when we come back in January, I'm going to do a really short piece on just really thinking about what's coming up, right? We've been on
Hmm.
vacation for 2 weeks. Where did we end up? What's the major work of this grade level?
Hmm.
What's the content of these modules coming up? We have 50 something days. Like we can't teach it all.
Right.
What are the big pieces that they really need to know, right?
Hmm.
And then starting that Wednesday, so 2 days later, and then for subsequent 3 weeks in a row, we're going to be backwards planning, taking the assessment, thinking about um, the understandings and the mindsets that I had to
Hmm.
have as a learner to take this test, right?
Hmm.
How do I then look at these lessons that are coming up in this module with an eye towards how are we going to build that, right?
Hmm.
And so, now we have a consistent, like, okay, now we can plan for it, and then now we can look at some student work and analyze the choices that we made as in our instruction. So I had to fight for that because, I hadn't seen them since September.
Hmm.
It's now December. What happened to the focus on math? Right. And
Hmm.
so, if there's not a person like me that's going to push back all the time,
Hmm.
then it's not going to get covered and teachers aren't
Hmm.
going to get what they need. And so, yes, we need to support our educators, and they've had enough EL support. Sorry. Look, that you need to move on. You need to do what you're doing, what you've learned. And I'm not saying that they're not going to be supported, but let's just have some coaching cycles for that, right? But the
Yeah.
PD, teachers really need to do the math together.
Yeah.
And they need to
Yes.
see that there's not just one way to do it.
Yeah.
They need to see, oh, I didn't even think about that way, but my kids might think about it that way. And how do I lift that up so that they feel like, oh, I can solve math problems, right?
Right.
Unless teachers are doing math together, I'm not going to necessarily see how Dana's going to do it. And Dana's not going to see how Monica does it.
Yep.
And I remember doing a PD out in Moreno Valley,
Hmm.
like kind of like the Sacramento to LA,
Yeah.
right? Hella far. And I gave this problem. I forgot what the problem is, but there were multiple ways to solve it. And this teacher was like, isn't there, I think it was a systems of equations
Hmm.
problem, right? And she was like, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. She's like, aren't we all going to do it the same? And I was like, humor me. Do it how you're going to do it. And then we came back and like six different ways came out.
Hmm.
Somebody used GeoGebra. Somebody
Hmm.
used, no, not Geo, whatever, a graphing
Desmos.
calculator. Desmos. No, it wasn't. It was just a graphing calculator.
Okay.
And then, is there see, this is where I'm like at a loss with secondary. And then somebody did it with pictures.
Oh.
Somebody did it with the graphs. Somebody did it, there were different ways. And she was like, oh, I like the way he did it. I wouldn't have thought about it to do it that way, but the way that he did it makes more sense than the way I did it. And
Hmm.
so that was really, that's why I'm like a huge fan of teachers doing math together
Yeah.
because there's no way you can know all the different ways. There's just not. And the guy that you were talking about, right, that's a 60-year-old.
Yep.
I mean, we were taught just do this series of steps
That's it.
and you'll get the answer. Well, what if
Yep.
those series of steps don't make any sense to me?
Yeah.
But I could have done it these other steps. It might seem like it's longer to you, but guess what? I got to the same place and I'll
Yeah.
never be able to get it the way you did it, but I got it the way I did it. So,
I love, so what comes to mind about teachers doing math together, um, I never thought that I would be a fan of the idea of a year-round system.
mm,
But in the past few years, the reason why, in my mind, a year-round system would actually work better for teachers and students is because if we go through 6 weeks or 9 weeks of school and then we have roughly 2 or 3 weeks out, it's not that teachers, because every year-round model I've seen, they still get roughly like a month and a half, 2 months out.
yep.
They still get the time ends up being the same.
Hmm.
But what I love is during those breaks, the kids are out, the teachers just have to go to school. So let's
Hmm.
say if we have 2 weeks, right? We go to school for 6 weeks and then we're out 2 weeks, or we go to school for 9 weeks and we're out 3 weeks. During that 2 week or 3 week period, you let's say if it's 2 weeks, 1 week is PD and teacher work days, right? And then the other week, maybe let's say they give us the time off. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Then now we have more time to take a situation like what you're saying. And then now, so we worked on it today. We talked about these different ways to do this particular problem. Okay, well, now let's go tomorrow and work on a different topic or a different lesson or a different unit. And we can start seeing more and more ways to do the math as teachers because
Mhm.
there's so many different people. I think one of the things that I started to embrace Common Core and the newer math curricula is because me being a I'm gonna say it like this, me as a mathematician and my
Mhm.
love for math, I like the challenge of figuring out, like, I think this is stupid the way they're showing how to do it, but I want to figure it out just so I can teach it to the kids.
Right.
Because I don't want the kids to think that, like, Mr. Harris ain't even teaching from the book. Why do we need the book?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all right, dang. And I did this probably 2 or 3 times this week. I was like, wait, nah. On my lunch break, even though it's only 20 minutes, let me figure out how to work this problem out. Or let me be prepared to be able to work this problem out for my coworkers. Excuse me. One of my coworkers last week, he asked me about a problem, and I was like, I'm gonna get back to you. Got tied up, didn't get back to him. I was home that day working through some math, and I sent it to him that evening. And he responded to me the next morning. He was like, "Hey, thanks, Mr. Harris. Like, I totally forgot about it." He was like, "And I was asleep." But I think that that was cool because it gave me a challenge. If I'm in the position of PLC lead, I want to be able to say, hey, this is how you can work through that. But I
Mhm.
also, in regards to that concept of like a year-round system, it's now I've got more time to do that. Now I've
Mhm.
got time to work it out with my teammates and with even people from other schools that are teaching the same thing. And now we can have more extended dialogue about it. So then now we have more tools in our toolbox that we actually have used.
Right.
You mentioned earlier about all these tools.
Hmm.
The thing with all the tools, if I've got a huge toolbox with let's say I have roughly 20 tools in my toolbox,
Mhm.
but I'm only using a hammer, a Phillips screwdriver, and a flathead screwdriver 90% of the time, and maybe a socket wrench. Those are going to be my go-to tools because I know how to use those tools.
Mhm.
I'm not going to touch those other tools over there that I don't know how to use like that. It's like with my beard. For the longest, I started cutting hair when I was 13.
Uh-huh.
I just started using a straight razor on my face in like 2018.
Mhm.
Why? I didn't know how and I had a fear of it.
Mhm.
My biggest fear was that I was going to cut myself.
Mhm.
And so I use that as kind of like a parallel or metaphor to teachers having these different tools and not knowing what to do with those tools. And so you give them a curriculum, and I got PowerPoints for each lesson set up for you. I got warm-ups, I got cool downs, I got assessments, I got uh uh answer key. I got all these different things, but nobody actually even, on one hand, nobody even showed me as a teacher that I have all these different pieces,
Mhm.
let alone where to locate all these different pieces, and then give me examples of how I can incorporate these different pieces. And so bringing this plane back around, so then now that makes pacing even more challenging for me as a teacher if I'm that teacher
Right.
because I'm trying to struggle through figuring out where's this tool? How do I use that tool? When do I use this tool? Oh, and by the way, I've got people telling me every week at our PLC meeting that, hey, you should be here. We're going to all test on this day. We went from common assessments to now common test days, common assessments, common grading, common. But guess what? All in the name of equity.
That's not equity though.
Absolutely.
I mean, I can't stand when people say everybody got to be on the same page at the same time doing the same thing. I was like, where's the equity in that?
It's not at all.
Like I got
It's a
fired
one
from
size fits all model.
I got fired from a company that said that they were equity focused. and they did not make space for my neurodivergence. They didn't make they didn't make space for the way that I needed to learn. They didn't make space for the fact that I had some ideas. You know, it was only their way of the highway.
Right.
And so, I mean, they did me a favor when they got rid of me. I was
Yeah.
like, get rid of
Yeah.
me. Anyway, like I think that you bring up a good point that in trying to make sense of all this stuff as the adult learners in the room, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think um you know John Wooden.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
UCLA.
Yes.
I still haven't read his book and I need to read it.
Oh. So he was a teacher first,
I
right?
did not know
So
that.
he always like he thought of himself as a teacher. And what he would do with his coaching staff is that they would engage in inquiry every year. So everybody laughs about inquiry, this, that, and the other, right? Inquiry
Hmm.
cycles. Well, they would do that where they would choose an area of focus. And not that they didn't do all the other things, but they were going to study one thing in depth for the whole year. And by the end
Mm.
of that year, they knew how to do that thing.
Hmm.
So, for example, we need to increase our free throw percentages. So they would sit there and like think about like what's the problem? What are the tools we have? We know how are we going to address it? Blah blah blah. And they go through these cycles of continuous improvement. And but they that didn't mean they didn't do the other stuff, right? And so similarly, I think that teachers need time to say, okay, let's focus on this year. And then
Hmm.
maybe we can add the tools next year. So this year we decided that we were going to really understand what's the major work of our grade levels.
Hmm.
Did that work in August. And we have this big old chart on the wall that shows this is like where you're supposed to spend the majority of your time. Not that you don't do the other things, but this is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. And that's where the curriculum is going to spiral back. So you don't have
Right.
to worry about it being mastered in the first module, right?
Yeah.
And then we talked about productive struggle because teachers are like, they don't know how to solve problems. I was like, but that's because you keep coming to their rescue. Instead of letting them know that you believe that you gave them that hard problem because you know they can figure it out and support them
Hmm.
in unpacking it, you know, you got this pacing plan, right? I gotta move, I gotta move, I gotta move. So let me hold their hand and walk them to it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And
Guilty.
so, you know, that's a piece of it. And then like last week, oh, I had so much fun with this. I took problems from our program. Like people always say, you keep bringing all this stuff from outside. I'm like, no, I got these from the program. Did K through 5.
Hmm.
And I had the teachers engage in all of the problems, like do the math. And then we're
Hmm.
going to come back together and talk about what's the understandings that you need, the mindsets that you need. So this one teacher who's a RSP teacher, she was doing a multiplication problem. I think it was something about 9 boxes of crayons, and there's 8 crayons in each box. How many crayons do
Hmm.
we have, right? So she drew 9 boxes, and then she drew 8 sticks in each one. And then she starts counting them one by one. She goes, teacher, I forgot where I was. I lost my place. And so I pointed to the box of manipulatives in the book in front of her. I
Hmm.
said, "Can any of these things help?" And I just happened to have this two-sided kind of whiteboard
Hmm.
that I laminated, and on one side it had a hundreds chart, on the other side it had a number line, 10 frames, and something else. I don't know.
Hmm.
But I said, might any of this help you? And first she looked at the side that was opposite of the hundreds chart.
Hmm.
And then she goes, none of this is going to help. And then she flips it over and I'm like, how might that help? And I didn't tell her how, but I was like,
Hmm.
might that help you? She goes, oh. And so she starts skip counting by eights and then marking the groups of 8. So until
Hmm.
she did it 9 times.
Hmm.
And so that's how she solved it, right? But I didn't tell her you need to solve it this way. I said, look in the box. Is there something in there that might be able to help? And I don't think unless teachers are engaged in this kind of thinking, I didn't grow up with these tools. I'd
Me
never
neither.
seen a hundreds chart. I'd never seen base 10 blocks. I'd never seen counters. I'd never seen link cubes. I've never seen this stuff. Never
Mm.
seen a 10 frame and how those things help our young ones to understand the 10ness of our number system, right? So
Hmm.
until our teachers go through, I mean, my upper grade teachers were like, I'm not using any of that stuff. And they were straight on the paper, like with their paper and pencil. And
Hmm.
they're looking at me like, why do you keep asking me to go in that box?
Hmm.
I said, because this isn't about you. This is about what might help your students solve these
Hmm.
problems.
Hmm.
Because these are the problems they're going to have to solve. They're in your curriculum, right?
Right.
So that's another layer, right? So you can't hit them all with everything. It's just like, okay, until we get through this, let's leave all that other stuff. And then let's just keep adding a layer, adding a layer, adding a layer. But otherwise, it's too much to ask.
One of the things I love about what you said is that because for those upper level teachers, they're right on one hand. Because as they get older and older, they start to snatch the manipulatives away, right? And the assessments are more rigorous and things like that. And it's kind of like in elementary, the standard talks about going from learning how to multiply to multiplying with automaticity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother story. But so a kid goes, it's like a kid goes from solving one step equations to solving multi-step equations where you got a variable on both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I found a very cool tool to use. It's called, why can't it come to me? Anyway, I'll find it later. But anyway, what I realize is that when they start to pull the different manipulatives and toolboxes away from the kids, and they're saying that, oh well, they have all these different tools. The curriculum is set up for the kid to be able to solve the problem different ways. That is correct. But the other thing is we start adding this element of time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when we start adding the element of time, I think those are the things that starts to increase anxiety levels in a kid, and those kind of things. That's why testing anxiety is so at an all-time high in my personal belief, because I, I I have to learn as a teacher how to incorporate this time to ask the question and wait for students, to
Mm-hmm.
ask to give the task and wait for students to start talking about their entry points
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And then now let's come back together and have a discussion about the entry points, right? And how did you all solve it? How did you all solve it? Boom, 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 boom. So now everybody in the classroom gets some of this.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think the challenge is that teachers that really want to do those things, they are forced to either just say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to be rebellious and do things my way. And at the end,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the results from my kids. Or if, right, we know that. We know a teacher fresh out, a fresh into the profession doesn't know you're not going to get fired for not being on perfectly on pacing. We know that we know because we've been in the business for a long time. All right, fire me. It's gonna make more work for you than it is for me. Those kind of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that, and I know that that comes with experience. What I would like to see to kind of start wrapping this up and bringing some pointers to the teachers that are watching this is I believe that you learn those things from experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you look at the number of students that you and I have taught individually, we're talking about thousands over these years, right? So when we've experienced thousands of learning experiences, uh, from the teaching side and the learning side,
Mm-hmm.
we now have so many different tools that are just within us.
Mm-hmm.
So there's certain things, if you go start a new position next year, or if I go start a new position next year, there's certain things we just don't worry about. Let me figure out how y'all run this ship around here, and
Right.
everything else as far as the classroom and the content, I'll take care of myself.
Right.
I believe that it's important in regards to pacing, for teachers to be able to go in and dissect the curriculum, and then now the time is a matter of what they're concerned about. And so for me, I would encourage teachers to start small.
Mm-hmm.
Start small, look at the unit as a whole and how it's broken down into the lessons or the modules, right? But then if we compare that to standards and the major frameworks, you were the first person to introduce me to that document. The major frameworks, now I know, oh, well, I don't have to spend too much time on this because it's not part of a major framework of this grade level. So yeah, let me pick and choose this, and let me take out a chunk of the module or the lesson and say, hey, we're going to just focus on these two problems a day. But we're going to break them down. And this might not be, we might not do the gradual progression. We're not going to do example one, example two, example three. No, let's just get straight into example two. Let me give them a good intro, a good bell ringer, do now, whatever we want to call it. And then let's have a fruity discussion on the major framework of this lesson. And if I can get kids to talking about that stuff and understanding that stuff, then now, even if we linger on it for an extra day or an extended amount of time, then now they've gotten more from it. Because some
Mhm.
people go through each and every module, each and every example, each and every lesson, blah, 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 blah. But the
Mhm.
kids aren't able to see how it's coming together like a puzzle.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what would be um your words of wisdom for a teacher and how they can manage pacing and things like that in regards to the many things that they're working to put in our toolbox?
Along the lines of what you said, less is more. I think that you can take one problem, and if it's a good problem, a lot of understanding connections to one another, connections to the math are going to come out when students have the time to have conversations with one another. I'm not talking about, call and response, me, the teacher, to ask you a question, Dana. I'm talking about how do I facilitate conversations amongst them
Right.
so that I can take myself out of this situation. And I think
Right.
that it's interesting because I think people think that that we're going through a lot of backflips and this, that, and the other to go through every little piece of that lesson
Yeah.
instead of, again, less is more. Let me do this one piece. Let me think how I'm going to facilitate this. And there might be a little bit of thinking on the front end, but as you do it, it gets easier and easier because there's like a rhythm to it, right? There's kind of
Absolutely.
a formula to it. I called it
Yeah.
math workshop. There's an opening, a work period, and a closing conversation. And
Absolutely.
the two last pieces are about the same time, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, and what do I do as a teacher as they're working, right?
Right.
How do I ask questions? But it makes it so much easier on our part. Like I've found less work in the classroom in front of students when I do this less is more, but I really think
Yes.
about how do I how do I give the directions? How do I unpack this problem? How do I get them started? When do I shut up? Like, you know what
How
I
do I
mean?
ask better questions to them?
Hello. And that takes time.
It does.
There's reasons that you ask questions because they didn't hear you the first time. You want to clarify their thinking, you want to advance their thinking, right? There's different reasons why you're trying to ask questions. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I think the first and foremost is less is more. If you're trying to get through 147 lessons in 180 days, it may seem like you should be able to get through those 147 lessons, but then why are we still in module two halfway through the school year? And
Yeah.
this is not, I'm not talking about teachers because I mean, honestly, the ways in which they are trying to make sense of this stuff for themselves without any support is ridiculous. So less is
Agreed.
more, ask good questions.
I think to land this plane, what I like about that is that because I give credit to teachers. A lot of people probably have conversations with me and they probably think that I think teaching is terrible and all these negative things, right? It's not. I enjoy teaching. I love just the relationship building. I love to see the lights go off or come on in the classroom, things like that. But I see it as a way of giving hope to kids because I tell kids all the time, no matter what profession you're going to go into, whether you're going to be an entrepreneur, whatever it is, or whether you're going to be in a profession where you work a 9 to 5, you're going to have to learn something.
Mhm.
And so I believe that the biggest things that kids get from school, the institution of school, are the intangibles. They're
Mm.
soft skills.
Yep.
How to speak for myself, how to ask good questions, how to communicate with people that I don't know, how to learn from someone that I don't like as well as someone that I do like, how to advocate for myself. All of these different, how to be on time, how to take a piece of information that may not be presented in my learning style, and what can I extract from that to make it into my own learning style so that now I can not just regurgitate the information, but I know how to process and think. And when we put a lot of the different constraints on teachers and students, it hinders them from having those type of
Ooh,
learning experiences.
yes, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, as we wrap this up today, Monica, do me a favor and please let everyone know how they can be in contact with you on your socials, your YouTube, and things like that.
So Inside the Teacher Studio is now on YouTube. I'm still working on
Woo, I got
uploading
to give me one of
our,
them soundboards so I can hit the
I know, right?
cheers and stuff like that. That's the next level.
So this old broad is learning how to do this stuff. But just a shout to Inside the Teacher Studio. It's really about celebrating the artistry of teachers, specifically to this end, right? We've got all
Hmm.
these rules and regulations and frameworks and timelines that we have to hit. And unless we really dig deep and trust in how we can make it work for ourselves, that whole artistry and creativity piece,
Yeah.
we're going to hate this. Like you're going to
Yeah.
hate it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we do on Inside the Teacher Studio is really celebrate where people are really thinking out of the box, where they've made these things work for them. And so I'm on YouTube now. I'm on Instagram, Inside the Teacher Studio. I'm one feisty female, so I'm over there starting stuff as well. Yeah, hit me up. Follow on YouTube. I'm excited to finally get to that, to finally launch that. So,
That's phenomenal. And for me, those of you that aren't familiar, on Instagram, Young Gurus underscore Math Tutoring. That's two G's, YOUNG, GURUS. My YouTube channel, this is my pride and joy right here. Um, Young Gurus Math Tutoring. And Monica, as always, I want to thank you. I want to definitely give you props on the wonderful things that you're doing to create phenomenal learning experiences, not with just kids, but with teachers as well. Because I personally think teaching kids is way easier than teaching adults. And yeah, and now the older I get and the longer that I'm in the profession, I realize that those kids that I once taught are now the teachers. And so
mm,
I'm seeing certain things, certain behaviors, certain
right.
patterns, certain things that I'm like, wait, you did that, or you wore
Yeah,
that, or you said that, or you, yeah, those
yeah,
kind of things. So thank you for always just being a phenomenal educator and just being a shit starter, because we need a
no,
lot of them. Like I have, there's no shame in my game to say the things that I say,
yeah,
because at the end of the day, like I always tell people, I can say certain things because I really care about them kids. I say it, of course, in a much more vulgar way, but we need those people who are willing to
right.
come in and share our experiences with these kids. So until the next time in a couple weeks, enjoy
Thanks
your
again for having
holiday.
me.
I know you're looking forward to spending some time with your boys and things like that and hanging out with your homies.
Yep.
So definitely happy holidays, and shout
Same
out
to
to
you.
everyone watching this, whether live or replay. Happy holidays to you all from myself and Monica as well.
See you in the new year.
Deuces.